And the great thing about this is if you have dry packet of Gatorade or any other supplement, you could always just sprinkle it in right in the top, shake it up if you want to have something other than that. A lot of the facilities, softball, baseball, basketball, there are hundreds and thousands of full-size Gatorade bottles, which costs the students a lot of money. And so breaking them out of that habit and into something new is something to explore. I'm going to get out of this because we're out of time a little bit. I have set up a document which I can send to everybody if you like. It talks about possible phases of implementation. It's way overwhelming. You know, if we went through it for 20 minutes, you guys would go like, well, you know, how are we ever going to get to all this? But that's not the point in sustainability. You can't recycle everything or I'll drive a Tesla around and do everything perfectly, right? It's like, what step do you guys want to take? How can I support you with that? And let's just do one and feel good about it and then move on to the second step.
Yeah, I think that's we were also going to, you know, reach out to you guys, and if you had ideas and ways that we can change or, you know, bring towards the table of what Guy and I have already been doing. And guys, he's just, your ideas are so, like, we're so excited, and but it is overwhelming and it's a lot, especially, you know, trying to get back on campus and step by step and bring our student athletes back. But again, it's a chance for us to bring them back with kind of a different motto and say, hey, this is our philosophy and this is what we want to try to implement, and get them to buy in, but also get our department and our athletic department to buy in. And the you know, like I said, take little steps by step and not throw it all out there, but just little tiny changes will make such a huge difference. And we just need to try and take that first step, and to have you guys support us in that and to be open to it, I think is the first step. And then we, you know, bring in the student athletes to buy in. So we love your guys' input and support in any way possible. So I'm here to help Guy any way I can within the transition and the communication, and kind of be the leeway between sustainability and our committee to our department.
That's great, you guys. Thank you so much for that information. And Guy, if you guys don't know Guy, this dude is one of the hardest working guys I've ever seen, man. He's jamming around campus nonstop, and he is a baller. And we all know Crystal, so we don't need to talk about what a baller she is, but this is an awesome initiative. And so I really hope you guys will disseminate this information to your players and your students, and see if we can make an impact on that and make some change. So thank you, Guy.
I think that's the biggest thing. We can be the example. So
yeah, we should be walking the walk if we're going to be talking the talk. No doubt about it. Okay, thanks, you guys.
Thank you, Guy.
Hey, can I ask a question, Lenny?
Yeah.
I just want to know from Guy and Crystal, if we have suggestions or questions, do we just email the two of you? Is that the best route to go?
I think if Crystal doesn't mind, she's really this, you know, she's the central liaison to you guys in the communication loop, and then I'll assist her.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you for your work, you guys.
Thank you, Guy.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks again, you guys. Okay, we're on to our next agenda item, and I want to remind you guys that we are recording the department meeting as we always do, and that we're gonna always have different perspectives, and that's natural and normal, but let's be respectful of each other like we always are, and let's have a great training here. We mentioned to the department, or we talked about this at our last department meeting, last couple of them, that we were going to form a committee, and we were going to present trainings and information to our department. So this is a day where we're going to do that. We've dedicated part of our department meetings, each department meeting, to work on this, and again, try to make some change in a really important issue. And so this is one of those trainings. I would like to just confirm that we are having an event on April 30th, but it is not necessarily a mandatory department meeting, but it is a flex activity. And I put the flex information in the chat. So if you guys would like to use that as part of your flex, you are able to. Another thing that I would like you guys to start thinking about is, we talked in our EDI committee about the possibility of having more meetings as a department, and kind of just, but we'd like to hear from you guys. We're looking at, right now we have 4 meetings typically a semester, and we wanted to add some meetings in between those meetings for these specifically EDI trainings and educations. And so we're going to send a poll out to just see how the department feels about, extra meetings, and so that we could hopefully at our last department meeting have a conversation and maybe even have a survey or a poll from everybody to see how the department feels on adding additional meetings for the next academic year. And maybe it turns out that those meetings have to be only flex activities, but we'll see. We think this is an important topic, and we feel like we have attempted to dedicate our department to make progress in this area. And so, it's, we're trying to create those opportunities. So more information will be coming on that, but I wanted to throw it out there to you so you could start thinking about it. We have 4 meetings. We're talking about having meetings in between the department meetings based on when speakers are available and things like that. So we want to hear from you guys. So we'll be getting more information to you on that. And so now I want to move into our guest here, and I would really fired up to have another one of these sessions, and they're always valuable. Tara or Monica, oh, Monica's not here. So Dr. Jeremy Smotherman is here, and welcome, Doctor. We're super thankful that you're here to join us today. And so that being said, I'm going to just kind of turn it over to you, and you could take it from there. Do you need me to make you a co-host for anything that you might share or anything like that?
Yes, if I can be made a co-host, I can share my screen.
You got it. I'll do it right now.
And thank you all for having me today. I'm very excited to be able to talk. I got distracted. I'm like, oh, there's someone in the waiting room. Would you like me to admit that person? Or do we
Oh,
know
I
that?
got him.
Okay. I was like,
Ow.
woo. I'm very excited to talk about the data for the department, looking at the idea of equity as well, and really kind of getting more of a sense of how we can start looking at equity in a certain way. So one of the things that I wanted to help preface before I really get into my discussion as a whole is that when we talk about equity, sometimes we lose the fact that SRJC is a very diverse entity. It's more than just the diversity of the students, it's the diversity of the different departments, educational goals, and things along those lines there. So I'm very happy that you're looking at a department in terms of what you can do. So as I present data, one of the things I always try and talk about is what's the story that we're going to be looking at. So as I share my screen. All right. So the presentation that I'm talking about today is really about data equity and the journey. And by the journey, I'm talking about what the student journey is overall, to understand that, because when we're talking about equity, that's very important. So one of the things that I always utilize to try and talk about equity is the idea of a plot mountain. The idea that when we're talking about students' journey, there are key areas that we need to pay attention to: the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the resolution. Most of our data, though, ends up being exposition and resolution. What's the beginning aspect of the journey? How do we know or understand who's kind of in our student journey? And what's the outcome of that journey going to be? And so when I was looking at data for the department, that's really what I came across. So a lot of things that I'm going to talk about or I'm going to present is really about the beginning aspect of the journey and the ending aspect of the journey. So there is a lot happening in this slide. I know that. So let me go through it one by one. So over in the top left, this is just an ethnic representation for fall 2020 in terms of what student participation was for the department. And this aligns very, very closely with what our SRJC population is. So if we're thinking about representation, the department participation represents what the student population as SRJC as a whole looks like. A couple of different notes just to kind of put out there is that in fall 2020, the department had 1,014 students that were enrolled in courses. And then fall 2019, there was 2,144. So there's been a decrease, but of course, that's all due to the pandemic. I just want to make sure that I put that out there because we're going to be fluctuating a little bit between fall 19 data and fall 2020 data. But the reason why I'm doing that is because the pandemic kind of mixes things up a little bit. So in terms of course outcomes, because that ends up being the biggest thing, what's our course success? What's our course retention rate? I have everything laid out here. I'm not sure if you were in academic senate this past Wednesday or not, but our institutional set standard for successful course completion is 75%. So in most of the program areas, everybody is over, except for in dance. And I do not remember what K combo is for the life of me right now. I looked it up like 4 times to try to
That's our
remember.
combatives.
Thank you. I'm like, oh, I looked it up 4 times to remember, and here I am failing. I apologize for that. So those are the only areas where it's lower than our institutional set standard. All right. In terms of retention, everything is very high. I would say for most departments, we're looking at low 80s in terms of being kind of where everything's at. Again, combative is at 76%, a little bit lower, but it's all about context. This isn't an aspect of success or failure per se in terms of the department. And that's the thing that I really want to talk about is how do we dive deeper into the data to understand what's going on? So one of the first things that I put out there is full-time versus part-time status in terms of the students who are taking the classes, all right? So we see with the different areas, one, as hopefully we all know, generally speaking, full-time students represent about 20% of SRJC's population, which means that 80% is part-time students. But when we're looking at the full-time, part-time representation for the department as a whole, we see that, you know, in many aspects, you're higher than what those averages are, specifically in athletics. And everything else is a little bit higher as well. The only areas that are low are aquatics and the K teams. But that's to be expected in many different ways. All right, but when we're looking at fall 2020, they level out a little bit more. So you're serving a good amount of full-time students as well as part-time students, more so than what the majority of the campus is focusing on as well. So you really have a diverse student population that you're working with, and that's important to be contextualized. We're looking at gender representation. Again, looking at the bottom of it, the department average is 51% female, 47% male. Of course, that's not going to equal to 100 because there are people who do not identify as either female or male, they're non-binary. And again, looking at what that representation looks like in the different program areas, it's very diverse. You know, we see, for example, dance, 80% female, 13% male. We can look at it in a different way where we see, let's see here, what's the one I want? The combative is 30% female, 70% male. Some of that may be just based off of the content of the classes or really kind of some social norms that are put out there. That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the department in and of itself. But those are questions to look at in terms of, well, what do we want to do? What do we want to accomplish in this area? Do we want to help increase some of the gender diversity of the department? And then this is the biggest one that I always look at. It's adult learner versus the traditional age. So just FYI, adult learner is anybody who is 25 years or older. Generally speaking, they represent about 54% of our student population at SRJC during spring 2020. So that's just to give you a little bit of context. Whereas you're looking at a 25-75 split in terms of adult learner versus the traditional age learner. So again, that's something else to think about in terms of who are the students that are being served for every single program activity that you have. And the only one that really kind of follows along that trend of the district is aquatics when you're looking at that 60-40 split. Everything else is a little bit lower. And then of course, athletics is 97% versus 3%. So these are all things to contextualize to put yourself out there in terms of really understanding what that student journey may be looking like and what answers you want to have for it. And then getting to the exposition portion of it. Program awards. What are people coming out with? So there are a lot of interesting things to put out there. One thing that I have over on the left side is that program awards are represented in the ethnic groups program awards for KAD are represented in the ethnic groups of Asian Americans, Latinx, multi-ethnic, Native Americans, people who didn't provide one, and white students. One noticeably missing is African American students. So not every single ethnic representation is getting a degree from the KAD department. When I'm looking at the adult learner versus the traditional age, again, it's interesting seeing where the balance is at. For fitness, nutrition, and health, it's pretty even. Same thing for kinesiology. The transfer degree, you're seeing people more on the traditional age who are going for it. But you did have somebody as an adult learner who was going for the kinesiology AAT degree. And of course, the yoga certificate, the yoga training certificate, you had 11 students who were adult learners versus the one that are traditional. The biggest key here is seeing that there is definitely a trend in terms of who is coming out with outcomes. And what does that mean for the department? How are you impacting the college campus? And when we're talking about equity, what does that really mean as a whole for you? Because going back to this first slide, and this is the one that I really want to make sure I re-emphasize, the department in terms of outcomes that we generally look at regarding equity is doing well. I didn't see anything that was overly noticeable to kind of point out and say, well, this is an area that needs to be increased. This is an area that needs to be increased here. When I'm looking at the dance and I'm looking at the combative, like one of the things I saw for dance, and I don't think it was necessarily a major issue, but what was weighing down that successful course completion rate is that 50% of people who identified as Latinx were passing successfully and 50% were not. It's hard to tell at this top level what that really means. If there's an aspect of instruction, if there's an aspect of, financial aid that's involved, but those are questions that can be asked and look further to. If I had, a full hour to kind of go over it, I'll probably provide a little bit more of a deeper dive, but I just wanted to make sure that I kind of whet your palate and get you to look at things in terms of what is equity going to be looking like and what questions do I need to have impact for equity in the department and for the campus. So, because I know I didn't have a whole lot of time, I wanted to put out some reflection questions. Let me make sure these are the updated ones. So again, like I mentioned before, the institutional set standards in terms of successful course completion is 75%. But does that mean that that needs to be the standard for the KAD department? As you saw, in many cases, you guys are in the 80 to 90 percentile range. So the question is, should KAD increase its standards of expectations related to successful course completion? Do you want to say, you know what, we hold ourselves to this standard, and when we're not at that standard, this is when we need to figure out what's going on an equity basis, because students as a whole are being productive. And then looking at different areas in terms of age, the traditional learner versus the adult learner, in addition to gender as well as ethnicity. And then again, more reflective questions, because equity is an aspect of action as well. We want to be able to take actions from the department. How do you feel about the ethnic representation of students within the department? As I showed you before, the ethnic representation does align with SRJC, but that's not necessarily the case for all the different program areas of the department. So is that something that we want to pay attention to? Do we want to try to increase that? Do we want to make sure that everyone feels welcome to come, even if they may not end up taking our courses? So that's something that we haven't quite fleshed out with, because with the general success, retention, and enrollment numbers, I can't tell you if people feel welcomed or not. How do you want to measure the impacts of KAD on students at SRJC? What's that outcome that you want all students to have? What do you want them to feel that I've gone to my class and I've left with A, B, C, or D? It's very similar to the SLOs that you would want to have students have. But really, it's more of what's the impact that you want to have measured to get that additional equity lens that's out there. And then how are KAD programs actively supporting students in their population minorities? So again, going back to, for example, the gender slide here, right? Females are minorities in certain areas, males are minorities in certain areas. How are we helping support those students who are in a minority to achieve in the area that we want them to achieve? Are going to the adult learner, sorry, this is the full-time and part-time. For people who are full-time students or people who are part-time students. And then for the adult learner, you know, students who are on the minority aspect of it, they're not representing a good portion of the population that you're working with. And then the last question, how does CAD want to influence the SRJC culture? Because from what I'm seeing, you are influencing more students who take full-time courses and more students who take part-time courses than a lot of other departments as a whole on campus. So your impact on what the culture of SRJC is going to be very big, because all students are interacting and you are the representatives of SRJC. So what are your outcomes, or what outcomes do you want to have that will support the equity lens, but really support the culture that we're looking at SRJC and the culture that people are going to have of, or the perception of the culture that people are going to have of the CAD department. So just in reflection, coming back to it, looking at the plot mountain, like I mentioned before, we were only looking at the exposition and the resolution. But we also need to try and find areas to look at the rising action of the student journey, the climax where students are making a decision and the following action. And so those are things that I kind of put out there, and I really want to be a partner with the department as a whole to figure out, how do we measure these areas? How do we understand, well, we know that students are starting off in this way, but what's that journey looking like? How are we able to determine where to get to the resolution that we want to go? What's that path looking like, and how do we support that path? So, taking action. I'm all about making sure that we take action. It's important for us to look at the narratives inside of all data. So again, that looks at more of the rising action, climax, and following action. But again, understanding the exposition as well as the resolution. I feel today trying to get a better understanding of who those students are that you're working with helps starts to create that narrative for the student population as a whole. And then again, determining the section of the plot mountain that's being addressed by data. Data is presented in many different areas, but understanding how it's impacting the student journey is important. If I just say representation of enrollments, again, that's most likely an exposition, that's the beginning. But you're trying to maybe get to the decision point, the climax of the student journey. How do we go about that process? And then always use data narratives to identify areas of growth. I always feel that everyone can grow. I know that I can grow. And hopefully data support that. And I feel like narratives really provide that additional support. And then more importantly, use data narratives to personally reflect on how you impact or influence the student journey. Because in the grand scheme of things, faculty end up being one of the most influential components of a student journey. You're teaching them, you are really engaging with them on a very personal level. That's more than just process that sometimes we receive in the student services area. It's really about you being, I don't want to say necessarily a gatekeeper, but you're being the gatekeeper of student success in their eyes. And they're trying to make sure that they're being supported by you. So what influence and impact do you want to have on that journey? A few data resources to put out there, just so that if you want to look at them on your own, or we can discuss them as well, is our grade distribution charts that we have on the fact book at SRJC. And then if you always want to look at the student journey as well, this is a snapshot in time. So I won't say it's completely 100% on the point, but it's the Chancellor's Office Student Success Metrics. These are the big level metrics that the Chancellor's Office utilizes to show aspects of equity, but also enrollment, progress, and growth for the entire system, but as well as SRJC. So that is the end of my presentation, because I didn't want to bore you with like 10,000 hours of Jeremy talking about data, because I could do that very easily. Let me stop sharing my screen. There we go. I can do that very easily. I see hands. I love hands. So I'm going to go with the first person that I see, Jill.
First of all, thank you so much for giving us a ton of information, very succinct and very well put together. So thank you very much. And also thrilled that it's current data, because a lot of times when you go through stats like that, it's like 3, 4, 5 years back, and you're like, how are we doing right now? So I would love to see, because the last year and a half has been so nuts with the pandemic, I would actually like to compare that to the, a couple years before. So maybe go like 4 years back and see if the trends are the same, or if, the X factor or the Z factor of the pandemic has really shifted these numbers. So that would be kind of fun to look at that and see before this happened, how was it looking? Or maybe even, before the wave of the fires or something. It's kind of interesting, because I know we have declining enrollment and the community's changing, and we have all that on top of looking at, equity and ethnic diversity and how successful our students are being and what programs are in. So it would be kind of cool to look at that. But I really appreciated having those current numbers. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Cassandra.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Smotherman. That was extremely informative and awesome. I love seeing numbers like that. I'm curious, and this is a long-winded question, so please forgive me. I'm curious on how college funding for programs were taken into consideration in gathering this data. For instance, athletics receives college funding, whereas dance does not. Athletics has their own counselor, their own study room for a study hall with instructors available to assist them. Student athletes receive meals, their uniforms are purchased, where dance does not have that financial support from the college. I'm wondering if dance had that same financial support, if we would see those numbers skyrocket. And if that's something, I know that competition and games have a lot to do with that, because you are part of a community college athletics system. But I'm wondering what we can do for dance to better support our students financially, because when they're supported financially, they succeed.
That is one of the most amazing questions that I've heard today. So I want to make sure I give applause for that. Because all that context is extremely important. So that's why I made sure that I very prefaced it in the beginning that this data is only looking at the exposition and the resolution, the outcome. What you're asking about is that falling action, climax, and rising action. And right now, we do not have a good way to identify that. So I feel like a way that we can probably work on that, and I'm more than happy to work with you on that when it comes to a little bit more of the resource allocation piece, looking at the PRP process and saying, well, how do I tell what that story is? So that way everyone understands that resource allocation, while it's not the end all to everything, it's still extremely important. And if I want to be able to grow, these are the things that I need to be able to have to be able to grow, because we see strengths in these areas here. They're being supported in a different way. I don't want to get into the aspect of funding levels and money, because that's not the point. But they're being supported in these different ways here. So I'm just trying to make sure that I can get that same type of support, so that way my students are able to succeed as well. So anything that I can do to support that, and we can kind of brainstorm a little bit, because the way that I look at it, everybody in this room is the subject matter expert. I'm just the little fly on the wall that sees like the big picture stuff, but I don't know the details of what's going on. So that additional context is going to be very helpful for me, and I love being able to support you for that.
Yeah, I'm down to work with you more on that, just to see where I can do better and support my students more. Thank you so much, Dr. Smotherman.
You're welcome. Tara.
Yeah, I was just curious, when we're looking at the outcomes and those numbers, how do we compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges when we're talking about it? So like, for example, the fitness or the yoga certificate, we may not get extra funding or meals for our students, but maybe the success rates are looking okay. So how do we sort of look, how do we find that story on what exactly is happening, and how do we correct some things? Like, how do we dig down and figure that out?
Great question. So that's why I asked those questions at the end, because I feel like those reflective questions really get down to what you're asking about. So that way the campus knows really what the goals are of the department and of the program. So for example, when I'm seeing those 11 certificates for the yoga instruction, and they're all adult learners, I'm like, you're supporting actually a pretty good population of students at SRJC. And so how does that narrative get weaved into what exactly we're doing as a whole and what the college is going to be focused on? So if we're looking at the idea of adult learners as a whole, and we're trying to support, and sorry, now I have like my career education hat on, and we're trying to support, the aspects of attaining living wage, jobs and things like that. Your program has supported 11 students, which is a lot inside of that component of it. So we can work on that, but I think really just putting it out there, like what exactly are the goals that you're trying to accomplish beyond just the success or attention stuff? Because even though I know I'm being recorded, so, this may come back to bite me, those are important, but those aren't the end all be all when it comes to that student journey. And so that's one of the things that I want to make sure that we do is we look beyond those things. Yes, we have our standards that we have to meet, but especially when we're dealing with a very unique population of students in terms of their interaction academically with the ones that you're working with, I want to make sure that's more contextualized and that's valued as well.
Great, thank you.
Marty.
Hi, thank you very much. That was great. I teach one of the combative classes, the boxing class, and one of the numbers you gave was the gender specific. And I was curious because we, at one point, probably 15 years ago, we did have a female only class, and we thought it was going to do exceptionally well, and it just didn't do well. So I wasn't sure if that was a number or you had a suggestion, or it was just some of the combative classes just get a different population. I wasn't sure on that.
No, yeah, and that's what I tried to make sure that I mentioned is that it's probably just the fact that it's a different population that comes to the program. Like, and okay, I'm going to put my own personal biases out here. I'm not going to talk about your program. I'm just going to talk about myself and my own, I guess, perceptions that I have. When I think about like aquatics, I didn't see any Black students in aquatics. That's a general social stereotype as a whole, but it's not something that's necessarily surprising. So would I say, you know what, aquatics is doing a horrible job because they don't have any Black students? That's not fair at all. That's not fair to the instruction. That's not fair to the curriculum. That's not fair at all because there's bigger social structures that are out there. And I think that's a very similar thing when we're talking about combative classes. It tends to be a little bit more male dominated in some areas, but that doesn't mean that you're not focused on equity or things along those lines. Another example that I'll put out there, and I guess I'm just trying to make sure that I'm giving you tools that people start talking about these things, that you have them. The biggest one that people talk about in California, for example, is our fire technology programs, because those are like 90% male at this point in time. So sometimes it's just the nature of what society has set for us, and we have to try and buck that trend. But as long as we're doing things to buck that trend, I think that's where it's more important. It may not be reflected in the data. That's why I was talking about the PRPP process and things like that to show this is what we're doing. Our numbers may not reflect it, but no matter what, you can't say that I'm not doing anything.
Okay, thank you. There was, when we had the two classes, it was interesting because quite a few females signed up for it was supposed to be a male only class, female only class. This was like 20 years ago. It's pretty interesting that we even did it. And they wouldn't sign up for the female only class. So it actually didn't make. And
no, I feel you. As somebody I was a wrestler in high school, and there were 3 women on my wrestling team in high school. They wanted to mix up with the men as well. Like that's just their thought process.
Yeah.
So again, that's the contextual aspect of it that gets lost in some of these numbers. Yeah. And so that's why I always want to make sure that I'm mindful of that aspect of it. So I'm not going out there telling the campus, well, look at this. So if at any time you feel like that's happening from OIR data, please let me know, because that's not what I try to do at all.
No, I just was curious because that number, I don't think that number is ever going to change. So
yeah, and that's what I'm saying when I'm saying like restate what your standards are. That's what I was putting out there as well. Yeah. I was trying to do it generally for everybody, but I think being reflective in terms of what you feel like your norm is important, because it may not match up with the bigger context of the college, which is fine.
And a quick clarification: we all buy our own jerseys too. We don't, for athletics, we don't get jerseys, so they have to we have to fund. I just paid $5,000 for jerseys.
Yeah, we do, but there, at least Matt has come up with a way that we're going to get some help now. So
Yeah.
we're making progress in that category, but I hear you on that, Marty. It costs about 30,000 for football uniforms.
Awesome.
My hand down, sorry.
Are there any other questions, comments? I really appreciate and I love the dialogue. For those who've been with me in other meetings, this is like my sweet spot, is because I get to really try to provide some additional context of what's going on, and not just say, let me provide a number and call it a day.
I'd like to have a question here. I'm trying to get in, and it's kind of out in the left field, but I'm going to try it out anyway because it might be, we're talking about increasing. And I saw those metrics that you guys collect are amazing. And they dropped from almost half of CAD classes. And I'm sitting here thinking, looking at my fitness classes, the decline in the general population of activity. And I know we have some important people on Senate representing us. If CAD were to become a mandatory 3 units, where people had to be exposed to these wonderful instructors showing them movement. We have really excellent instructors that motivate and have very creative classes. I've worked with several of them. Is there any way that those numbers would have gone up if that it had academic value instead of us trying to sell our program through creative ways of doing it, make people have a year of activity and be exposed to the thrill of movement and things of that nature. And then you take us from being salesmen to being desired. And I think if there had been academic value, which there is, we're transferable to colleges and stuff like that, many classes and stuff like that. But, and it starts in high school. I'm an old man. We used to have to take physical education. It was great. My favorite subject, here I am. But basically, people aren't active now. And if it were to become a mandatory 3 units to get your AA or to transfer, instead of selling it, make them come to us and be exposed to it. And that's my opinion.
Dr. Smotherman, if I could jump in there and maybe answer this for Paul. Paul, that used to be part of the AA requirement for all AAs at Santa Rosa Junior College. They had to do at least 1 unit of physical education, and somewhere along the line that was taken out. And I know there's been great efforts by the state and by every college to decrease the number of units for AA degrees to get faster transfer for students. So that is a topic that we've talked about for a long time, of trying to figure out how we get that back into graduation requirements. And to be honest with you, I'm still not 100% sure on that process, but that would be wonderful if we were able to do that. There's no doubt.
I think would have made the numbers go way up, because Matt pointed out CAD had one of the toughest roads to hoe. Who wants to go to PE classes when there's no facilities, like that? That's a big challenge right away. And I actually thought we did a pretty good job. Everybody's still here.
Yeah, we did a great job, and
we're still kicking. We're still kicking, So
it's very similar to the LIR 10 class. That's a 1 unit class. It's a graduation requirement for every AA degree. So I think, should meet up with the library people and see how they made that happen. And that may be, if some of you are working with other people that are from the library on some of your other committees, that's a good question and conversation to start having. Okay, I think we're.
Thanks for the time.
Yeah, Dr. Smotherman, man, that was great, and super thankful. Thank you for being so patient with us. We were behind on our schedule and we kept you longer than we were supposed to, but really, really appreciate the information, and thank you. And we hope to see you at some games. And I think I can speak for our athletic director that there's probably some really cool SRJC Bear Cup gear in his office for you. And when we get some sweatshirts for football, we'll be happy to send you over so we can, what do they call that? Synergy. We can get a little working on both sides of the campus.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Thank you all for having me. I'm super appreciative. Like I've said before, anything that you need, I'm available for. We can work together on any aspect that you need data-wise, or even working to try and get some of the research allocation stuff put together. All right. Thank you for your time, and everyone have a great Friday.
All right.
Thank you.
I asked Dr. Smotherman to email the presentation to me and I'll send it out to everyone.
Thanks, Tara. And thank you guys for the great questions. I think that was really good. And it's interesting to me to look at that stuff. That's the first time I've seen a presentation like that just broke down. I mean, we have the stuff that we talk about in meetings and we send stuff out, but it seemed like there was just the way that was presented. It kind of, it makes you think. And that's what all of these EDI, in my opinion, that's what these EDI workshops are for. You know, it's to provoke thought and to dig deeper and see more than just the surface level. You know, oh man, my guy shows up every day to practice with a smile on his face. Therefore, he should be having a wonderful experience at SRJC. May not be the case. And so you dig deeper. And so these types of conversations, they force you to have thought and they force you to, you know, look deeper. And that's the point. And so appreciate the questions. I think they were great. And Dr. Smotherman was great. Any other comments before we move on to our next agenda item? Tara, yes.
I just wanted to add in there about Paul, you know, your idea of making it mandatory. Library 10 is only mandatory for the local AA degree. It's not for CSU or IGETC. And we have several degrees now that are online only. And so if you wanted to have that added to the local degree, you'd have to have an online only option always available for that unit for students. But it's something to think about. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, Terry, you know a lot about a lot of stuff. Thank you very much for that explanation. Now, I was a little ignorant about it. I'm just thinking it philosophically speaking as a matter too, just for the whole picture, you know.
Yeah. No, I agree with your concept, Paul. I'm on board with the
understand.
idea. Yeah.
But no, you do. You help me all the time, and I appreciate it because I need it. I gotta have that help with the. I'm good with the PE, but the academia is a little tough for me as well. So thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, thank you, Tara, and thank you, Paul. Okay, our next agenda item is the KAD mission statement, and I sent that out with the agenda. And so this is a topic that, you know, as we go through these EDI and we go through sustainability and we go through different topics that have now become maybe more current or more relevant, we want to make sure that our mission is up to speed and is accurate to what's happening and what we are attempting to make happen in our department. So I'm going to share my screen right now and just pull up the mission statement. Let's see here. Okay, can you guys all see that? Anybody?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, all right. Perfect. So anybody just like to start off with some comments on here and just to get the ball rolling? The mission of this topic to discuss the mission is again just to make sure we're up to speed. And these mission statements also exist on specific web pages also. For example, there's a mission statement for dance, there's a mission statement for athletics, there's a mission statement for, I believe, a few of the other areas as well, the concentrated areas. And so this is our overall, like this is the umbrella of all of that. And then the mini umbrellas would be those specific programs. So as we look at this, we're looking at this as a whole everything together. Tara?
Well, Monica had forwarded, because she can't be here today, her suggestions, and I really like them, which is to break this into mission, vision, and values. And that way we can include more concepts behind it instead of one mission statement. So I thought
I can
that was,
I think that's a great idea. You want me to share that real quick while
Yeah.
you're talking about it?
yeah. And I
Yeah.
like, well, Crystal brought up the sustainability, and we're working on equity, diversity, inclusion. So my first thought was just, trying to include those values in our mission and vision, and those two things.
I think those are good suggestions. Jill? I'm gonna take
I
notes.
just wanted to write this. Maybe I'll put it in the text, but I know we all have, I've done a lot of mission, vision, values work over the years. And sometimes it gets really jumbled in my head of what should go in what. And I'm recently working on a different committee, and we're doing our strategic plan right now with actually an equity mindset. And they gave it, the people taking us through it gave us like two really good definitions of like the difference between mission and vision. So your vision is the world we want to see, like where we are going, right? And the mission is our role in transforming the world. And that must be specific to our organization. So like the KAD mission should be specific to KAD. So I'll type it again in the text. And I literally have this posted on my computer now because it helps me keep that clear in my head. So again, the vision is the world we want to see, meaning where we're going. And the mission is our role in transforming the world. And that must be specific to our organization. Just throwing it out there because it's very complicated to dive into these things and to do them well. I'll put in the chat. It was helpful for me.
One thing I noticed is just the lack of social component to the statement, which I think is if we talk about what we do as coaches, teachers, a large component of our educational process is making sure that our students acclimate to the social environment in a way that's appropriate for survival, right? That's just something I see as lacking, and whether or not we want to include that, maybe we just want to stay within the framework, but to expand it, that social component is I think a vital piece to it. Well, I'll take that back. If it's something we feel is valued, like we need to include to create that well-rounded student. We have a responsibility, just like English, math, science, to help and shape, right, and help and boost up and continue to support these students in their plight. And part of their plight is to socially acclimate, and we use fitness as a tool, right? So that's just something obviously that's what we're talking about. But that's the first thing I noticed is lacking. That was lacking.
Jill, do you still have your hand up for something else, or was that a leftover?
Sorry.
That's all right. Okay, well, great comments. And what I think what we'll do is I'll take notes today, and then any comments that come up, and then we'll just start a living draft of the mission, and maybe have a couple of versions that we could send out, like one that's because I like the idea of the mission, vision, values also. I think that's consistent with our college, and as well as unique to our area. So I'll if anybody's strongly opposed to that, obviously we could talk about that too, but I think that's a good place to start, and then we can start dropping things in those boxes in terms of, is this mission, is this values, is this what is it, and then get everybody's feedback, and then we can finalize that, and then hopefully we can get it up on our website I would like to just have the question, like, should we have, I mean, seems like we have a lot of mission, vision, value statements. Like if we're going to have different ones for athletics, for dance, for maybe, you know, certain programs in our departments. I'm not saying it's not necessary, but I just want to throw the question out. Is it necessary to have different ones for all those? And Jill, I see you put your hand back up, so I'm going to go ahead and call on you.
Did you copy and paste this off our website?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go in and fix that typo.
Ha.
I'm like, damn it. Okay.
That was your question. Okay. So in terms of everybody else looking at this, are there any other suggestions of areas that you think maybe we missed the mark that haven't already been mentioned?
Lenny, can you put the one you had up that I think you said Monica had written a draft? I didn't see it very
Oh
long.
yeah,
Can
no
you put that
problem.
up again? Thank you.
Absolutely.
I think we can probably take the SLO.
There it is. I think this is a really good start. And we could, you know, and I don't mind doing this, I'll take the existing mission statement and take things that I think are still applicable, and we'll start putting them into these different areas. And I think we could maybe start with coming up with just some lists that we could just start throwing in there as we work on the draft. Oh, we miss it. Is Karen, were you able to see that long enough? I want to, because I'm still taking notes on this other document I have open.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Stanley. God.
It's all right. Don't worry.
Dog it.
Yeah, it's great. I was going to
good.
ask, it's okay. I was going to ask Jill's, I love that definition because I also have been confused for a long time about vision, mission, and it gets kind of cloudy. Does the definition of vision and mission and vision that you gave, Jill, work in those two definitions? Are there any, you know what I'm saying? Do we have to move them around? Does it talk about where we want to go on the first one and KAD specific on the second? I love both those ideas. I love this draft that you put up, Lenny, or that Monica did. And I love the idea of trying to get it, you know, to align with what vision should be and mission should be. I love that.
Thank you. Jill, do you still have your hand up, or is that just a forever hand?
No, and combatives is spelled correctly. FYI. Crisis averted, everybody.
First off, nobody probably even realized that you typed that into the website. So for you to take personal offense of a wrongly redlined, misspelled word is not necessary. We know that you're an English major and you went to Davis and Cal and
Hey,
and
representation's important.
Us state schoolers really appreciate having you guys in the room to boost the overall GPA.
All right. Well, we're good. We're all good.
Any other comments, you guys, or suggestions? And I'm sure there's going to be lots more. So as we start, you know, adjusting this draft and sending it out, that's hopefully going to spark some more conversation on this. And maybe this is something we, you know, this is a good initial conversation. And then maybe we have this on our department meeting agenda at the next one too, to see, like, let's talk about the draft now that we have. And hopefully we'll have a draft by then. I see Donna Birch has a hand raised. Yes. Hello, Donna. You have to unmute, please.
Thank you. Where it says mission, what is our role? The spelling of role.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was thinking dinner roll. I'm getting hungry. I've been on this meeting for so long.
Okay, that's all I had.
Jill, how come you didn't catch that?
Hey, I'm only taking personal accountability today.
Oh,
I'm not
IG,
feeling like calling you out.
IGMer. You're the IGMer. I got mine.
Oh, goodness.
All right. Okay. Let's see here. I don't see any other hands, you guys. But if you do have other information that comes up after our meeting is over, please email those to me and I will get them in the draft. Okay. Let's get back to our agenda. Okay. Reports. Usually we start out with this but we're finishing with this. So hopefully, well, it's recorded so everyone will get it. But in terms of department chairs report, since I'm talking right now, and then we'll go to Matt right after that, and then go to some of our committees. Matt and I are scheduled to be working on proof 2 next week. I've been gathering all the information that you guys have been sending me in regards to what could be taught online, what has to be taught in person, and so on. And remember, the goal of that is to determine what classes could help free up classroom space as we come back with social distancing protocols and things like that. And then how all these, the thing that is frustrating right now is for all of us, and I'm sure everybody's feeling this, and we talked about it a little bit in our meeting prior to this, is that, you come on the Santa Rosa campus and you're almost in a hazmat suit, and then you get off campus and you can take it off and go in the Belvedere and do shots. And it just seems a little crazy. And so I think everybody is feeling the frustration of this. And I don't really know what to say about it. I mean, other than just, I want to mention it in my report that you're not alone if you're feeling this. And so we're hoping to get some guidance soon, and maybe Matt can mention some of that in his report when it's time. Jill, you have your hand up again, or is that the same one?
Well, Matt, if you want to do your report first, but I just wanted to say something, but I can wait for Matt.
Okay. Once again, just reminders, please look at your summer school schedule. People are going to be signing up for those classes very soon. And when you change them after people are signed up, it is extremely troublesome, and it just unraveling it is tough. So please take a look. As I mentioned, we're doing fall proof 2. We also are working on the PRPP. And so if you have wants, instructional needs, things like that, please let me know. Whether we get money or not, that's not the factor. But if we do get money in the things you're requesting, if they're not in the PRPP, it's always a challenge to try to get those things or acquire those things. So other things coming up, we're going to be doing some adjunct interviews this semester, hopefully sometime early in May. And so if there are people that that may be good potential people to get in our pool, or coaches with assistant coaches, make sure all their stuff in HR is up to date. So when we screen apps or pull apps, that those people are in there. Once school gets out, all these things become tougher to do. And so we want to try to get them done before the semester's over, when everybody's available on Zoom. We have evaluations going right now. Jill has sent out reminders to everybody for evaluations. We also have tenure review evaluations going on, and lots of facility stuff, you guys. So I would really strongly recommend that if you are teaching a class back on campus in the summer or the fall for that matter, that you kind of come onto campus before then and get the lay of the land. It's like the first day of school at a new school. The pathways are different. The parking's different. There's fences everywhere. And so just navigating, where you're going to park and what's the shortest distance to where you have to go, or that kind of stuff, or even how to get in a building. There's not access everywhere. So I would encourage you to come and check the lay of the land so that when you come back, it goes as smooth as possible. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Matt unless anybody has any questions for me specifically. And I don't see any hands, so Matt, take it away.
Morning, everybody. Thanks, Lenny. So there's obviously a lot going on right now. So I'm going to highlight a few things and then be open to questions. We saw Dr. Chong's announcement. I'll just give you my 2 cents on that. Is I'm meeting with Jane on the 13th. I've had that on the calendar for about a month. Topic conversation is basically what is KAD going to do in the summer and what is KAD going to do in the fall. So I don't have any more information other than what you read in the letter from Dr. Chong, and he's trying to open up our campus over the next summer and fall, kind of in a slow spigot type way, to where hopefully we're all back on campus and want to be back on campus in the spring. He doesn't want to force people to come back to teach that don't want to teach and that are having success online. And obviously we are still going through our budget reductions, as well as our hopefully this last semester in the fall will be our last schedule reductions. So I think he's trying to open it up slowly. But my plan is to go in there, and from what I've heard from most people, and Lenny will fill me in more when we work on the fall schedule. But what I think I know is that most people want to get our activity classes back on campus. And I know dance does, and I know our weight room and things like that in the pool and stuff, they want to do that. So that's my message. I'm taking into the 13th meeting with Jane. I know there's some hiccups in the county. When I asked to bring back some classes in the summer, they were told, the county asked me, how am I going to test all those general students? So they wanted me to test the general dance student like we're doing our athletes with PCR testing and stuff like that. So it's an interesting concept that is ever changing. So I'll know more in about a week, I believe, whenever the 13th is, and we'll get kind of a clearer picture on that. Yeah, that's kind of what I know now. And so as far as the bond, yeah, there's a lot of things moving, a lot of pieces moving. It's going fast. The construction is out of control. Every time I think I get a handle on something, I get a new diagram of a truck route coming into play and some flaggers coming into play. Every time I think the parking lot's going to be opened up, there's a big pile of dirt in the middle of the parking lot, now, and there's trucks everywhere. And the issue is, not only do we have our $50 million project going right now all at the same time, we also have the Central Plant project, which is not our project, but it runs through our project. And that's where we're seeing a lot of the issues with the miscommunication, is with that plant project and the person running that. And a lot of the issues in parking lot C in the walkway were because of the Central Plant project. And now if you come up Bear Cub Way, there's flaggers up there every day. And, so the Central Plant project hopefully is about 2 or 3 weeks away, and that'll start clearing out of our area. So hopefully we're seeing the end to that. But it is pretty crazy. So Lenny's suggestion about coming on campus and taking a look around is a good one. Exciting news. Spring sports start kicking off this weekend. Baseball starts, competitions, they're at a 70%. Softball, swimming, dive, and tennis start, I think, next week. So we're really excited about that. It's been a lot of work, but it's been very successful, thanks to Monica and Josh. And the amount of work Josh has put in has been unbelievable, especially with the baby on the way. It's unbelievable, Josh. Thank you so much. We definitely cannot do it without you.
No problem. Thanks for hiring me.
Yeah. No, thank you for being hired. It's been great. And obviously, leadership by Monica is really good, and our relationship with the health services has been unbelievable. The new dean, Rebecca, is in our corner. In fact, I just got approved last night that every student athlete will have the opportunity to get vaccinated next week. So that message should be coming out from Monica today, I hope. But it's voluntary. You don't have to make them get vaccinated. It's totally voluntary. We're not pushing anybody, but it's going to be offered. We're going to try and do, I believe, 250 student athletes next Thursday. So keep an eye out for that. So that was a huge, I'm at a birthday party last night for my mother-in-law. I'm texting with the vice president, and my wife's yelling at me, get off your phone. And we have this thing, banana split, when I'm on my phone too much. So anyways, but it was well worth it, because, getting our student athletes approved is a huge step in the right direction for us in all this craziness. So hopefully you guys will encourage your student athletes to have some time off next Thursday to get vaccinated. So that would be really big. We're bringing back the fall sports. Hopefully on Monday, we'll find out today if everybody's got their paperwork done, but getting the fall sports back with, I think, close to 6 full weeks of practice with equipment is going to be big. Where Dante and Justin are helping me put together 3 small weight rooms. So we should be open up the weight room next week as well with specific cleaning and things like that. So all that's going good. Our back to the bond a little bit. Our construction phases, the baseball, softball, and soccer should be done by December. Totally open for next spring season. Swim and dive, we're pushing to get ready by January, but with the punch list, it might not be till March. But we're really pushing for that. They're moving fast.